Welcome back to Young Tutor. Today we'll be taking up the topic of decimals. So, what is the speciality of decimals that completely brings it into another system of numbers, different from the ones we already know? So, the speciality of decimals is that we can use fractions as a way to get decimals, and the speciality that makes decimals this unique is that we have an entire infinite possibility of numbers that can go on forever. So there might be zero numbers between 0 and 1, but there are infinite decimals that come between 0 and 1. So this is what I consider as a speciality for decimals. Okay, so now let's get started by checking out what makes decimals and how to create decimals. So first, let's take the example of 643.125 or 125. If we take this number, we can write this in a simpler way, and that is this is a decimal number, and we have to write this in an expanded form. And if the question like this comes that you have to write it in expanded form, then the easiest way you can do it is by first dividing and completely separating both of these sides. Consider these as two different numbers first. So of course we've already learned how to do the whole number part, which is very simple because we've learned this at lower grades. But after this, ignore the point or the decimal point given and directly add a plus. Then whatever number you have here, physically put it there, but remember that it's not equal to the direct values. Then divide each of these numbers by a certain power of 10 going upwards. That is 10 to the power 1, 10 to the power 2, that is 100, and 10 to the power 3. But remember to not physically write 10 to the power 3 or anything, just write the number itself. So this is what it is called, and this is the easiest way I have found to divide a decimal number and write it into its parts. Now, what do we call these excess sections? We know that this is called the hundreds, tens, ones, but what do we call this side that is after the decimal point? We consider this side to be starting from the tens instead. So it'll be like tenths. So it's just nothing but the same whatever we write over here, just excluding the ones place. The ones place is exclusive to the side on the left of the decimal. Left of the decimal. But this side, like anything you have on the left, that is the same thing, you have to take it on the right, pull it back one, and then call it with a th added. Like how do we call Cardiac numbers like fourth? The same way we have to add a th on the end, and we'll get the same thing what we call it over here. For example, over here we have to take it one space back because it's exactly mirrored, and then take one place back, which we call tenths. Then the hundredths, the thousands, etc. This is the simplest way to understand it, but of course you can use the denominators as an easier way to understand whatever I just said. Now that we've understood how this works, and we've understood decimals quite clearly, let's move on to a little bit deeper section of decimals. How to multiply two different decimals together. So let's take the example of multiplying the decimal 3.2 into 4. If we take this decimal multiplication, of course it's a little confusing to take it at first. So I'll tell you to do an easy trick that I also know, which is 3.2. So here you can remove the decimal point, and then if you remember, as I just told you earlier, that's the hundredths, tenths. So whatever you get, that is, if you get tenths, or in this case it is tenths because that's the last digit, divide that number by 10. So in this case 3.2 is equal to this because of as per math. So we can this is eligible to be done as per the rules. Then we can multiply this by 4 by 1 just to make sure that we are it's okay. You don't even need to write the 4 by 1, but for reference I've written it. Then we can just multiply 32 into 4, which is 128, and then 10 times 1, which is 1. So in this case it's 128 by 10. And remember that if you're dividing by 10, any number if you divide by 10, the decimal point will move towards the left by one space. So how many ever tens you divide, that many times the decimal point will move towards the left. In this case we are dividing by 10 and not another different power of 10, a greater power of 10. So we will just move the point which is over here in between 2 and 8, so it will be 12.8. It's very simple to understand but yet tricky to analyze with different numbers. So I prefer you to go around and try different combinations of numbers to do this. Okay, so now that we've done multiplication and have understood pretty much how multiplication of decimals work, let's go over to the division side. Division is a whole nother story of decimals because it's just more confusing and quite hard to understand. So let's take the example that you are dividing the decimals So this is quite simple, as I just told you earlier, that no matter how many ever zeros are there, that is for every single power of 10, a zero gets added to the number. So in this case, in the case of 10 to the power 1, it is, of course, it has that 1 0, and therefore that's the simplest way I used to understand how the powers of 10. So if we take this number, we can write this easily in this format. Okay, so in this case we can see that we are taking 1000 in the denominator. That is, of course, that makes sense. And what we have to do is, as I told you earlier, for every single multiplication of division of 10, we have to pull the decimal point towards the left by 1. So we can, of course, a simpler way to understand what I just told you will be to write 1000 as 10 into 10 into 10, which means it's 10 cube. But in case you're not able to understand the cube method, you can also use this method to understand it simply in a simple way. So now let's just cut the 110 and then pull this over to the right. That means it's now 0.72. Then cut another 10 and rewrite this as 0.072. Let me just make myself some space. So currently we have this by 10 because the other two 10s have been merged with this number. So if we remove this 10 and remove the decimal point, put it over here and put another 0. In this case, this is our answer, which is 0.0072. And the entire denominator has been removed. Okay, so now that we've understood how to divide the decimals using at least most powers of 10, let's see how to divide a number or a decimal number with a whole number or a decimal number by a decimal. Okay, so now let's see how to divide a number to divide a decimal number with a decimal number. So let's take the example of 3.6 divided by 0.12 or 12. So we can write this in the same format I've written earlier. As I've taught you earlier, I've told you that we can easily remove the decimal points. So of course, it works in a multiplication format also. That is, we can, in case we multiply a number by 10, then the decimal point moves to the right instead of the left, and therefore increases the value of the number. So in this case, we've multiplied the numerator and denominator by 10. As the denominator is always 1, it's become 10, and the number is 36, so the value has not changed. And then we are dividing this number with this number, and this number we can easily write it as 12 by 100. Okay, so now that now you can go and watch the rational numbers video for getting a better understanding of what I'm going to tell you now. But in that video, I've told you on how to divide two rational numbers with each other. I'm going to be doing the same here. So check that video and then come back here. I will be also putting the link for that video in the description of this video, so you can check it out. But if you've already known, then let's just continue. So to divide in two numbers, I give you a brief of how to do it. Take the first number, put the multiplication sign, and then reciprocalize the second number. That is, just inverse the number and put the divisor as the dividend and the dividend as the divisor. So in this case, these both are equal to each other, and it's the laws of math. Next, we know how to multiply two numbers, so we'll just quickly get on with that. But we can see here that the number can be reduced. That is, the number still are not co-prime, and they still have some factors that can be divided with. So in this case, I can remove the 0, that is divided by 10, and then divided by 3 to get 12 on the top with 4 on the bottom. Actually 120 on the top with 4 on the bottom. So I'll quickly write that in a unread. And we can also see here that this can be further divided to give us 30. So this is our answer. 3.6 divided by 0.12 is equal to 30. Of course, it might look like a lot to comprehend, but it's quite simple. It's very easy to understand when you've practiced it once or twice, and therefore I'll be giving you a homework right after this. So you can use that homework and try that out for yourself by using these methods itself. Okay, so now let's go over to the homework section. If you watched till here, good job, you've learned partly about what are decimals. But for a little exercise, I'm giving you a bit of a homework that you can do it anytime as long as you know the numbers. You can note it down anywhere. So you don't need to come back to the video and get it, but you can for the answer, just comment down below and I will see if they're correct or wrong. Okay, so for your first homework, for the first two homework it will be based on multiplication, and for the second two homework, that are these two, they will be based on the division. It will be based on division. So let's see the first homework for you guys. The first homework will be 1.34 into 1000. So this does use a feature that I've not properly told you, but it's very simple. You can watch the video twice and understand it for yourself. The second homework based on multiplication will be So this again very simple. You can go ahead and try it on your own. It might take a little bit of time, but it's quite simple. It just takes some time to comprehend and understand. Now for the division homework. For division, let's take the numbers 1.673 divided by 1000 and 0.759 divided by 3. So try it on your own. These homework are quite simple. The channel's Young Tutor. You can go ahead, watch the other videos on the channel whenever you're free, or if you can watch them right now, no problems. And thank you for watching.